All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today's deep dive takes us into the fascinating world of elephant trunk wrinkles.
Elephant trunk wrinkles, huh?
Yes, we're dissecting a research article titled Elephants Develop Wrinkles Through Both Form and Function. We'll uncover why those wrinkles exist and what they can tell us about elephant behavior and evolution.
Sounds intriguing. I'm ready to wrinkle my brain a bit.
Me too. So the article starts by pointing out some noticeable differences between the wrinkle patterns of Asian and African elephants. Have you noticed those differences yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Asian elephants, they tend to have more of those prominent, deep wrinkles, especially in the upper part of their trunks.
Right, those major wrinkles, as the researchers call them.
Exactly. You don't see quite as many of those prominent wrinkles on African elephants.
And it's not just the number of wrinkles, it's also about their distribution.
Yeah, you're right. Both species have more wrinkles near the tip of the trunk compared to the base, and consistently more on the top side, the dorsal side, than the underside.
So the question is, are these patterns just random, or is there a reason behind those wrinkles?
Well, that's where the form and function connection comes in. The researchers suggest that those wrinkle patterns are directly related to how elephants use their trunks.
I'm all ears. Tell me more about this connection.
Okay, so picture this. Asian elephants, they're known for wrapping their trunks around objects, right? Especially when they're feeding.
Right, they have that signature wrapping technique.
Exactly. And guess what? The area on their trunks with the highest density of those major wrinkles is right where that racking action happens. They call it the trunk wrapping zone.
Ah, so those wrinkles provide the flexibility needed for that wrapping motion.
You got it. It's like having a series of tiny folds that allow the trunk to bend and curve effortlessly. Now, African elephants, they've got a different approach.
They use those two finger-like projections on their trunk tips for pinching and grasping, right?
Precisely. That pinching method doesn't require the same degree of trunk flexibility, so they don't need as many wrinkles in that specific zone.
Fascinating. So each species has evolved a wrinkle pattern that best suits their trunk usage. What about those extra wrinkles on the top of the trunk, though? That seems to be a common feature in both Asian and African elephants.
That's another interesting observation. The researchers think it could be related to the mechanics of trunk extension.
How so?
Well, when an elephant stretches its trunk out, the top side stretches more than the underside.
Makes sense. It's like extending your arm, the top stretches more than the bottom.
Exactly. So those extra wrinkles on the top might provide the necessary flexibility to accommodate that stretching without causing any damage to the skin.
It's like built-in stretch marks for their trunks. This is incredible.
It is, isn't it? And there's another layer to this wrinkle story. It involves something called lateralization.
Lateralization. Okay, now you piqued my curiosity. What is that all about?
Think about this. Humans are either left-handed or right-handed, right? We tend to favor one side for tasks that require fine motor skills.
Right.
Well, elephants have something similar, but with their trunks.
You mean they have a preferred side of their trunk for certain activities?
Exactly. Some elephants are left-trunked, others are right-trunked. They favor one side for tasks like picking up small objects or delicately stripping leaves.
Wow, I had no idea. So how does this trunk-handedness tie into wrinkles?
Well, the researchers made a fascinating discovery. They found that elephants actually develop more wrinkles on the side of their trunk they predominantly use for wrapping and other complex tasks.
So their wrinkle patterns reflect their individual preferences and habits. That's amazing.
It is. It's like their trunks have a physical memory of how they've been used throughout their lives. The study found about a 10% difference in wrinkle numbers between the two sides of an adult elephant's trunk.
That's a pretty significant difference. So we've got genetics, we've got behavior, all contributing to these wrinkle patterns. But what's actually happening beneath the surface of the skin? What makes those wrinkles form in the first place?
To answer that, the researchers took a closer look at the microscopic structure of elephant trunk skin.
So we're zooming in now, getting into the nitty-gritty.
Precisely. They used a technique called micro-CT scanning. Think of it like a super detailed X-ray that creates 3D images of the skin's layers.
Okay, so what did these scans reveal about the anatomy of a wrinkle?
They found fascinating variations in the thickness of the skin layers along a wrinkle.
Variations, tell me more.
Well, the outermost layer of skin, the epidermis, that seems to have a consistent thickness throughout the wrinkle. But the layer beneath that, the dermis.
The dermis, that's the thicker layer that contains collagen and blood vessels, right?
Right. That's where things get interesting. The dermis actually thins out in the troughs of the wrinkles.
So those wrinkles aren't just surface-level creases. There's a structural change happening deeper down in the skin.
Exactly. And the researchers believe these variations, especially that thinning of the dermis, could be a key factor in the trunk's incredible flexibility.
So it's like those wrinkles are engineered for flexibility at a microscopic level.
Precisely. And this brings us to another intriguing question. How do these wrinkles form in the first place? How do they develop? Were the researchers able to find that out?
They did. They decided to look back to the very beginning, to the development of elephant fetuses to see how those wrinkles emerge before birth.
Back to the womb. What did they find?
They observed what they call a bipartite pattern of development. Essentially, there are two distinct phases to wrinkle formation.
2 phases. Tell me more.
Early in pregnancy, there's a rapid increase in the number of wrinkles. They're added at an incredible rate. But then, as the fetus grows, that rate slows down significantly.
So it's like a burst of wrinkle formation early on, and then things settle down.
That's a great way to put it. And this two-phase pattern highlights the interplay between genetics and development. There's a genetic program driving that initial burst, but then other factors like the physical constraints of growth come into play.
Wow, that's incredible. It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as wrinkles can reveal so much about an elephant's biology and behavior. It really is, and this is just the beginning of our exploration. You know, it's really remarkable how those wrinkles we've been talking about, how they're shaped by so many factors.
It really is. It's like a combination of nature and nurture, all coming together to create those unique patterns.
Absolutely. We've got the genes, the behavior, even the environment playing a role.
Right. We touched upon how Asian elephants tend to have more wrinkles overall compared to African elephants.
And that difference, you know, it's not something that appears later in life. It starts showing up really early, even in the fetuses.
So there's definitely a genetic component at play here.
Oh, absolutely. It seems like Asian elephants, they've got this predisposition to develop more wrinkles. It's encoded right there in their DNA.
But it's not just about genes, right? We talked about how behavior influences those patterns too.
Exactly. Remember how Asian elephants, they're the rappers of the elephant world, so adept at curling their trunks around objects, especially during feeding.
It's their signature move.
And you know what? That wrapping action, it happens right where we see the highest concentration of those deep wrinkles.
In that trunk wrapping zone.
Precisely. It's like those wrinkles are strategically placed to provide that extra flexibility needed for that specific motion.
Makes total sense. Now, African elephants, they have their own technique with those two finger-like projections.
Right. They're more about pinching and grasping.
And that method doesn't require the same degree of trunk flexibility, hence fewer wrinkles in that zone.
It all comes down to efficiency, right? Evolution favors those traits that best suit an animal's needs.
It's fascinating how those wrinkle patterns are like a visual representation of an elephant's lifestyle.
And you know, there's another environmental factor that might influence skin and wrinkling.
Oh, besides the whole trunk usage thing.
Exactly. It's something we often associate with hair, but it affects skin too.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Humidity. The study suggests that African elephants living in those drier savanna environments, they might develop fewer wrinkles because there's less moisture in the air.
So, Asian elephants living in more humid regions, they might be getting a little wrinkle boost from that moisture.
That's what the researchers hypothesize. It needs further investigation, but it's a fascinating thought.
It's incredible how even climate could be playing a role in this.
We've got genetics, behavior, even the weather influencing those wrinkles. It's like a complex recipe for elephant skin texture.
Speaking of recipes, remember those micro CT scans we talked about?
Yeah.
The ones that let us peek into the microscopic world of elephant skin.
Oh, absolutely. Those were fascinating. They revealed variations in those skin layers along a wrinkle.
Can you refresh my memory on those layers again?
Sure. The outermost layer, the one we see and feel, that's the epidermis.
Right, and beneath that lies the dermis.
Exactly. The dermis, that's the thicker layer containing collagen and blood vessels.
And those scans showed differences in the thickness of these layers along a wrinkle, right?
Yes. The epidermis, it pretty much maintains a consistent thickness.
But the dermis, that's where the real action is.
You got it. It actually thins out in the troughs of those wrinkles.
So it's more than just those surface creases we see.
Absolutely. There's a structural change happening deeper down in the dermis.
And this wasn't limited to just one species or age group, right?
Right. They observed this pattern in both baby Asian and African elephants, suggesting it's a fundamental feature of elephant skin.
Fascinating. But why would the dermis thin out in those troughs? What's the advantage?
The researchers believe it's all about flexibility. Those troughs, with their thinner dermis, they act as these stress concentration zones when the trunk stretches.
Stress concentration zones. That sounds a bit intense.
Think of it this way. They're areas where the stretching force is more focused. Having thinner dermis there allows the trunk to stretch more easily without putting too much stress on the skin.
Ah, so it's all about maximizing flexibility and preventing damage.
Precisely. Now, to really understand how these wrinkles form, we need to go back to the very beginning, to prenatal development.
Back to the womb, just like we did in part 1.
Right. The researchers studied those elephant fetuses to see how trunk wrinkles develop while they're still in the womb.
And what did they discover on this journey back to the source?
Well, first of all, they found that the trunk is the fastest growing body part in an elephant fetus.
Really? Faster than everything else?
Yes. And those wrinkles, they start appearing remarkably early, around day 60 of gestation.
Day 60. That's incredible. They're already getting wrinkly at that stage.
It's amazing, right? Now, those early wrinkles, they're subtle at first, just faint irregularities on the surface.
So they're not born with a full set of those deep wrinkles we see in adults.
Exactly. It's a gradual process.
So how do those wrinkles develop from those faint irregularities?
It's a two-phase process. Between days 80 and 150 of gestation, there's this rapid increase in wrinkle number. It's like they're being added at an incredible rate.
So the fetus is just pumping out wrinkles during that time.
You could say that. But then around day 150, the rate slows down significantly. The trunk keeps growing, but new wrinkles are added more slowly.
It's like the elephant fetus has said, okay, enough wrinkles for now. Let's focus on getting bigger.
Aha, that's a great way to put it. This bipartite pattern really highlights the interplay of genes and development.
Right. There's that initial genetic push for those wrinkles, and then other factors like physical growth come into play.
It's fascinating how these wrinkles are shaped by both nature and nurture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those early wrinkles, they provide the foundation for the more complex functional wrinkles we see in those adult elephants we talked about.
This has been such an eye-opening dive into the world of elephant trunk wrinkles.
I know, right? It's amazing what we can learn from something as seemingly simple as wrinkles, isn't it?
It really is. And we're not quite done yet.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into elephant trunk wrinkles. It's been quite a journey, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We've gone from those macroscopic features all the way down to the microscopic structure of those wrinkles. We've explored their development in the womb and even touched upon their role in elephant behavior.
We sure have. But now I'm curious about the bigger picture. What can this research on elephant trunk wrinkles teach us about the animal kingdom as a whole? What are the broader implications here?
That's the crux of the matter, isn't it? This deep dive, it's not just about elephant wrinkles, really. It's more like a case study in how form and function are intertwined in evolution, how an animal's development influences its physical characteristics, its morphology.
Right, and how even behavior can leave a lasting mark on an animal's body.
Precisely. So these findings, they could have implications for understanding wrinkles in other animals as well. Think about rhinos, for instance, with their thick, wrinkled skin.
Yeah, those wrinkles on rhinos, they definitely provide protection. But I imagine they also allow for flexibility, especially around those joints.
You got it. And of course, we can't forget about those adorable Shar-Peis, those dogs with all those wrinkles.
Oh, those Shar-Pei wrinkles are the best.
Yeah.
I know they're partly genetic, but do you think there might be a functional aspect to them as well?
It's possible. Perhaps those wrinkles help with insulation, or maybe even temperature regulation. More research is needed, of course.
It's like this research has given us a whole new way of looking at animal anatomy. Like, we need to consider the development and behavior of an animal, not just look at a snapshot in time.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We can't just focus on what an animal looks like. We need to understand how it got that way, how it uses its body. It's all connected.
So what's next for researchers who are fascinated by these wrinkly wonders? Where do we go from here?
Oh, there's so many avenues to explore. It's exciting, really. One obvious path is to investigate wrinkles in other animals, of course. Do we see those similar wrinkle development patterns in other species? Do those wrinkles play a role in how other creatures move or behave?
So many questions. And what about diving even deeper into that microscopic level? We've only scratched the surface, haven't we? There's still so much to learn about how those different layers of skin contribute to wrinkle formation and function?
Absolutely. More detailed studies, they could reveal even more about those structural variations within wrinkles. And genetic studies, well, those could help us understand the genes involved in wrinkle development and how evolution has shaped them.
It's like this single research article has opened up a whole new field of inquiry. It's inspiring, really.
It is. And it reminds us that even those familiar animals, like elephants, they still hold so many mysteries waiting to be unraveled.
This deep dive has been a wild ride. We've gone from the macroscopic to the microscopic, from development to evolution, from elephants to a whole world of wrinkly creatures. It's been a blast.
It has. And we've learned that those wrinkles, well, they're far more than just skin deep. They're a testament to the incredible complexity of life on Earth, how genes, development, behavior, and environment, how they all come together to create the amazing diversity we see in the animal kingdom.
That's a beautiful way to put it. From vet neuro jar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.